Hey guys, Mr. Griggs here with another guided note video. Today we're going to be focusing in on Nazi Germany and the rise of Hitler. Without further wait, let's get into it. So before we get into the German state under Nazi Germany, we need to understand who Adolf Hitler was. Now, Adolf Hitler was born in Austria in the late 1800s. He is going to be someone who has a strong belief in something called anti-Semitism, which is a prejudice against the Jewish population. This will be something that unfortunately comes to the forefront of German policy during and before World War II, and will lead directly to the Holocaust, which is one of the most horrific human rights violations that we talk about in class, and is certainly something that you probably have some background knowledge in, but it's definitely something we'll focus on in the next couple of days. Adolf Hitler is going to be a veteran of World War One. He is going to be someone who is shaped by his experience fighting in the war, and like many young veterans of the war on the losing side, will become disillusioned with politics and with how the world is kind of working after the war. He's specifically going to be very upset with the stipulations in the Treaty of Versailles and how they punish Germany. So he becomes active, like many people, in radical politics. And in particular, he becomes active in a group known as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, also known as the Nazi Party. And he rises up quickly in the ranks and becomes leader of the party. And becomes so influential that in 1923, in Munich, which is a city in southern Germany, which is kind of the center of, extreme conservative right-wing politics, in particular the Nazi Party, he stages this coup, this attempted overthrow of the government. It was known as the beer hall putsch because it actually begins in a beer hall in Munich. It's a spectacular failure, and Hitler is sent to prison. While he's in prison for a few years, he ends up writing this book called Mein Kampf, which is translated to My Struggle. And it's a book that unfortunately becomes popular in Germany in the late 1920s. And it's going to outline and provide an overview of Hitler's views on various topics, in particular politics. And he's going to set forth kind of an agenda for the Nazi Party and his beliefs in the book. And these beliefs are very extreme, to say the least. And one belief in particular is this idea of extreme nationalism or ultra nationalism, which basically calls for obedience to the state, obedience to the leader, and unquestioned, unwavering support for your nation, whether it's right or wrong, and it's sometimes forced. This is a major belief of Adolf Hitler, and this certainly is something that becomes a reality when he comes to power in 1933. He also outlines this idea that is prevalent throughout the book called this superiority of the Aryan race, this quote master race, this tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed German, this ideal German who he believes should, kind of overtake the world, if you will. And he's going to blame in this book the Jewish population in Europe and Germany in particular for Germany's loss in World War One, and he's going to use the Jews as a scapegoat, a group to blame for the Treaty of Versailles and the punishment Germany had to endure after the war. So there's tons of racism, tons of anti-Semitism in this book, and this idea that a specific group in Germany, this Aryan race, this master race, should rise up and kind of take over Europe under the leadership of a leader known as the Führer. This is all found in the book. Now many historians point out Hitler's lack of writing skill, his grammatical errors throughout the book, and all that kind of stuff. So it's not a good book. It certainly has really nasty ideas, and it's just very unfortunate that it was published in the first place. But a lot of Germans take the ideas from Mein Kampf, and whether or not they say it out loud, there are many Germans who unfortunately agree with Hitler. And Hitler takes a lot of those frustrations and takes advantage of them in the book. Now, the Nazi Party is like any other political party in Germany during this time period. They are going to promise the people things, and they're going to run for elections. So they're going to promise people, a number of really important things. Number one, they want them to end, or they want Germany to end war reparations. They're going to say, hey, you know how we're paying all these nations a ton of money? Well, we're going to stop doing that. And we're going to create a ton of jobs while we're at it. And you know what? You know how our army has been weakened? Well, we're going to rearm Germany. We're going to make Germany a strong power again. We're going to make them a strong military power. I think at this time, Germany was only allowed to have 100,000 troops. They were barely allowed to have a navy, and they weren't allowed at all to have an air force. So, there are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to listen to Hitler and say, hey, that's an interesting idea. And many of those people include World War I veterans who are, sick and tired of, being blamed for the war and being punished for the war. Many small town conservative Germans are also going to like these ideas that Hitler is thrown out there. Like, for instance, this idea that the international community is, punishing Germany and taking things from Germany. Hitler talks about getting rid of foreign influence there. And a lot of small town Germans like this idea. Lower middle class people who are being, forced through economic troubles, people who are unemployed or underemployed, they're certainly going to, like the ideas Hitler's coming up with during this time period, as are business people. So there are a lot of people you hear Hitler, and a lot of people who agree with Hitler, unfortunately, because Hitler has very simple answers to complex problems. And he did that on purpose. He understood what people wanted to hear, and he took advantage of that. Now, Hitler comes to power in 1933 through a series of complex steps, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but essentially, like I said before, the Nazi Party was like any other political party, and they could run for office, and they could run for seats in the German Reichstag, which is basically like the House of Representatives in Germany. And Hitler had a reputation for being very anti-communist and anti-socialist. And guess what? There were a lot of people in Germany who were anti-communist and anti-socialist, particularly the conservatives in the Reichstag. So a lot of people backed Hitler, during this time period, who weren't necessarily Nazis. And with this conservative support, Hitler will become the chancellor of the Weimar Republic, which is a really important position because you get to, control what happens in the Reichstag and laws and stuff like that. But that wasn't enough for Hitler. Hitler wanted to become a dictator. All right. So what ends up happening is this mysterious fire breaks out in the Reichstag building, the physical building where the Reichstag meets. And it gets pinned on this Dutch communist who is found in the building as it's set on fire. And it's definitely a moment where Hitler says, hey, look at this. A communist is trying to overthrow the government. So, what we have to do? We have to start to clamp down on things. All right, so this paves the way for, and actually here are the some English language newspapers that actually talk about the fire itself, the Reichstag fire. And what ends up happening is a little bit down the line, Hitler asks for the enabling acts to be passed, which basically means Hitler could, pass any law without any approval. So basically, he becomes a dictator. And over a series of months, Hitler starts to consolidate his power here. They start to suspend civil rights. They get rid of communists and socialists. They start arresting people left and right. And pretty soon, Hitler consolidates his power enough to where there's only one political party, and that would be the Nazi Party. So enter the Third Reich. The First Reich being the Holy Roman Empire from the year 800 to 1806, when Napoleon, during the Napoleonic Wars, destroyed the Holy Roman Empire. And the Second Reich being Otto von Bismarck's unified Germany under Kaiser Wilhelm I's rule. And then the Third Reich being Nazi Germany under Hitler. Now, how did Nazi Germany consolidate its power and maintain its power? Well, it did it through totalitarian means and totalitarian measures. So it did a few things. It controlled all areas of life, from government to religion to education and so on. And it's going to use a elite political and military group known as the SS and the Gestapo, secret police force, to find and dispose any opposition or people who are basically against Adolf Hitler. And pretty soon you start to see civil rights taken away, so freedom of speech and freedom of press taken away. You start to see other political parties taken away as well. So there only is one, and that's the Nazi Party. And Hitler even goes so far to purge his own party, very similar to how Joseph Stalin purged his party in the Soviet Union. And there's going to be an event known as the Night of the Long Knives, where Hitler actually has many of the Nazi Party leaders actually executed. So that's a really, really big deal. And it's one way that Hitler was able to consolidate his power, to strengthen his power. Right? Next, we're going to be talking about anti-Semitism in Nazi Germany, which is going to be just heartbreaking and something that leads to the Holocaust, which is one of the nastiest human rights violations of the 20th century and of all time. It's just a really rough time, and certainly something that's very difficult to discuss, but something very necessary to discuss. So we'll get to that next, and we'll see everyone later. All right.